Um, how would you define creative confidence?
Wow. So creative confidence is my core value. When I left teaching, which I was doing for over 20 years, I was drama teacher for over 20 years and absolutely loved drama and everything it stood for. And when I left teaching and went into freelance work, I was really quite adrift. And I read Simon Sinek's book about the power of why. And his suggestion is to identify what is your core purpose. And then everything else that you do from that point on aligns with that to some degree. And so I reflected upon my journey as a teacher, as a student, as a researcher, as a colleague, as a member of my family, all of it. And creative confidence was the phrase that I came up with, that regardless of what I do, be it directing a show, leading a drama class, running a workshop, presenting, working with corporate clients to help them boost their success rate when they're presenting, all of it comes back to creative confidence. And so I'm so glad that you asked me that, because that has been my hashtag going through everything that I do. And I just use it not so much as a social media tool, but more to remind myself of that core purpose and how I want to progress in my career.
It's often something that it comes later on, I think, for people when they find out like what is the core of you, what defines you, maybe as a educator or a facilitator, lots of the terms that we use now.
Yep.
And we actually do this workshop with our participants where we try to have them identify something they're good at and then take what qualities they're good at and match that back into facilitation. So you don't have to be a brand new person. You don't have to reinvent yourself when you take in this new role. You have the ability to be able to take what's core to you. How much is like drama and and your teaching career? How much has that informed that notion of confidence? Did the idea of the world of drama and theatre, did that allow for confidence, or did you already have it and then you found theatre and drama? Did you find that was the avenue? What was the chicken or the egg kind of scenario here?
That's a great question. The chicken or the egg? I think I was probably quite confident from being very small before I found drama. And I often have friends and colleagues contact me and they've got a toddler who is wonderfully dramatic, and they've already identified that this child is going to be somebody that I ought to watch and be supportive of moving forwards, because they can already see that they've got that dramatic flair and that confidence within them that they know will be harnessed by the kind of work that I do. So I think I was quite confident from being very, very small. I'm very sociable by nature and really enjoy talking to people and connecting with people. And I think that was probably a trait from my very early years. But drama for me was the perfect vehicle to support that confidence, to channel it, to help focus, to engage with people. I'm not an actor. A lot of people who go into drama teaching have been actors and then go into the profession to support freelance life. That wasn't for me. I was originally considering being a stage manager. And what I really enjoyed about that role was bringing all the different elements of a production together. So the lighting design, the set design, the performers, that aspect of it. And then I realized that I could do that as part of my teaching career when I'm running workshops or creating performances. And so it dovetailed very nicely into my teaching career that, as I say, lasted 20 years. And the only reason I'm putting a time limit on it is because I'm not currently a full-time drama teacher. But so much of that still applies to what I'm doing now. And you said about articulating skills within workshops, and that is absolutely fundamental. And I feel hugely privileged that I had an education that supported drama. So many people don't. It's a big fight that happens all over the world, and I very much fly the flag for performing arts. Next week, I'm so lucky because I'm heading to Athens and I'm attending and presenting at the World Alliance for Arts Education conference, which absolutely advocates for arts. The focus of the conference is going to be how arts can be used to make awareness of sustainability more relevant. And it's a huge ideas connected with that. And those of us who celebrate the arts and who've seen its power resent in some ways having to continue to justify why it's so important and why it becomes second fiddle to other subjects and STEM subjects. There's a lot of STEM into STEAM, add the arts, and then you're taking it to a different level. Currently, I'm working for a charity that is a creativity charity. And one of the things that we do in that charity is really help young people from more socially deprived backgrounds than I myself was from to really identify and be able to articulate those skills that they have in a creative way. And so when you were talking before about facilitation and getting people to identify what are their key skills, what are their strengths that they demonstrate in other areas of their life, and then how can you apply that to facilitation? I think that's absolutely key, because that's what we do within these workshops. Somebody might be a babysitter at home, and we'd say to them, okay, well, what skills are you using there? Well, you've got to show maturity, you're showing leadership, you're showing communication skills, you're meeting deadlines because there are bedtimes and schedules. How can you take that experience and then potentially repackage it in an interview situation to be able to promote yourself with a creative confidence that you might not currently be feeling? So coming full circle, the chicken and egg, I think I had that confidence right from the start. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. My mum is also a drama specialist, so it was part of part of the package. But I think the career that I've had has really allowed me to celebrate that creative confidence, and now my absolute passion is trying to ignite that within other people.
I I feel like it so resonates with my mindset around experiential education. I know that, like, for those listening, you'll find that so many people across the world do experiential education, and it's not a reinvention. It's this really really positive way to be able to look at the way that we impart skills and knowledge in a methodology that is far more engaging. And I think
Yes,
that the arts is a classic example of a, I hate to say, but disrespected form of education. And
absolutely.
experiential education, we fight that is a very similar battle. It's almost
Yes,
pseudo education, where it's like if somebody has the extra funding, we can find space and time for this other methodology. And it's funny that you reference your mum, and it doesn't fall far from the tree. But my mum is a special educator, and I started in my education background. I started in public school education, teaching English. Um, and my initial entry point into school and teaching was special ed. And I was a para educator, a TA, teaching assistant. And I found the individual education plan, the model that they do with the special ed community, is so individualized and so much better than the larger public school mindset. And so, another area of the school that's often disrespected. Um, but it's fascinating that, like, those are the ones that we are really championing for
yes.
in terms of seeing positivity. I can think of lots of examples where I've seen some of that positivity. I wonder, from your perspective, maybe going back into your role as a drama teacher, where did you see the benefits of the stuff that you're talking about now naturally occurring, or maybe intentionally occurring, in your classroom? Are there any, like, moments that really stand out to you?
There are so many. I think I was very lucky to stay at certain schools for quite a length of time. So the last role that I was in was based in a British international school in Abu Dhabi, and I was there for 8 years. And it was an incredible job because I was brought in to establish drama within the primary school whilst the school was growing. So the school started off going up to year 9 or grade 8 in the American system, and then each year it would grow. So there were children there who I was able to work with from being 6 or 7 years old. And then to see them during those 8 years go all the way through the school system with drama as part of their bread and butter. They just assumed that this was what happened in their lives and this was part of their education. And they absolutely flourished. And then with new students joining, because it's an expat community, it's quite transient, different people come and go. It's absolutely incredible to see, because that culture was set, the bar was set really high, and therefore new students coming in just were absorbed into that enthusiasm and the passion that was being demonstrated. And to see some of those young people who went from starting off being really quite young, maybe not as confident, gradually to work their way up the school and to love drama, to take part in it, to be in different shows, different workshops, maybe choosing it as a GCSE and an A level option. The number of those students who then went on to leadership positions was huge. Every single year, when they were picking the head boy and head girl of the school, or the house leaders within the British system, but that hierarchy within the school, you could always see the drama students who had been going up through the school, who were now standing in those leadership positions, who were presenting in assemblies, running workshops for younger students, taking tours with parents. They were the ambassadors that were being shown to the rest of the community to highlight and celebrate what we were offering as a whole school community. But you could see the effect that drama had had, both in the short term and over the course of years. And I'm still in touch with a number of former students, both from my time in Abu Dhabi and other schools in Bahrain and Kuala Lumpur and the UK before that, and really love celebrating how their careers have progressed, depending on how young I was when I was teaching them, depends on how old they are now. But it has been incredible to see that. So that sense of zooming out and looking at
Mm.
progression over a number of years is huge. If I were to zoom in to one example, there was a young man whose mum came to talk to me after he had been in a performance, and it was a very exaggerated role. He was playing a villain, and she had never seen him in that way before. He was quite reserved. He broke all the stereotypes in being really quite a sciencey, computer-driven boy, which is absolutely fine. Those were his interests, but it meant that there was such a huge surprise, both by his parents, by the other teachers in the school, where they watched him perform and went, "Oh my god, is that is that him?" That was incredible. So seeing those real transformations in individual students as well has always given me huge amounts of pleasure.
Two examples have popped up into my head, if you'll indulge me, and then I have a question lead in after this. So first is that um, I was not gifted with confidence as a child, but I remember I was the lead. I played the lead rat in a production of Wizard of Oz. Now you're probably thinking, rat, Wizard of Oz? I worked for a school. I went to a school that didn't have the greatest funding in their drama department, so I was actually like supposed to be the head monkey or the lead monkey, but flying monkey, but they didn't have the props for the wings, so I just had a tail like a rat. Um, but then I ended up becoming in my high school our head prefect. Often when I say these things to Americans, they think it's Hogwarts-esque, but
Yeah.
schools in England, this is real. You wear uniforms, there's prefects, all this stuff. But so I feel like there's an autobiography but writing itself saying like lead rat head prefect. Um, but I see like that it being really beneficial to me in terms of my
Yes.
own forming of confidence. And then the next is now I reflect as a parent. My 8-year-old, I'm very fortunate in the town that we live in Vermont, Brattleboro. There is the New England Center for Circus Arts,
Ah,
and
brilliant.
run by two ex Cirque du Soleil performers, and preeminent in the country. And she's been going there as a toddler, and she also was demonstrating at a young age some social anxiety stuff that I have. Maybe there's some
Mhm.
genetics there, maybe there's some me, the nature nurturing. But I've found her confidence in the last year. She's now with part of the youth troupe at the Circus Arts School, and it's unbelievable. Not only the physicality, because she's doing trapeze and lyra and things like that, but
Yes.
the performance aspect of it. She performs on in front of audiences. She's very dramatic in some of the performance, sometimes comedic, sometimes she's considering the emotion. And I'm constantly blown away by the way that they're able to do that with the kids in that program. I will encourage you at some point, Joe, if you ever come to Vermont, to take a class with New England Center for Circus, or do a class for them in turn, because I feel like there's so much symbiosis there. So I've got two examples where I see the positivity. So my real question is almost like the counter to that. Why is it that it's still a fight to get drama into schools and all of the stuff you're talking about, which yet we are experiencing and telling people about the positivity of the experiences?
Okay, brilliant. Well, before I answer that, can I first say
Yes,
that
please.
I've got a line that I've used over the years so many times, which is, you never forget the shows that you're in at school. It doesn't matter
Ah.
what role you have, how big or how small it is. If you've been on that stage, you will remember it. You might not remember
Mm.
the maths test, you might not remember the spelling test, but you'll remember the shows that you were in at school. And going back to your daughter, of course, it's the collaboration, it's the teamwork, it's the meeting deadlines and those high standards. And I think one of the things that I've flown the flag for many, many years is the transferable skills. And I have had to pitch drama to parents. And I had this standard speech that I honed over many years that would be, especially when I was working in Asia, and parents would say, "Oh, they're having a lovely time, they're having great fun, Miss Lee, but it's GCSEs now, it's A levels now, and it's time to get serious." And I would wheel out my speech about the transferable skills, and it would always be, name me a business or name me an industry that doesn't want people who can work in teams and who can communicate clearly and meet deadlines and achieve high standards. And they'd gradually start nodding, and then I'd try and work it around, and then that, paired with their child's innate enthusiasm for the subject, would usually get them to sign up. So over the course of my time within different schools, that culture would start to change, and younger siblings would see older siblings performing or being part of it. And I should also note that when I'm talking about drama, I'm not just talking about performance. Drama in education, being part of a drama class, is not about leading towards a performance for the outside world. It's very much that we create drama and we share it with each other within our own context. So it's not always a performance and a theatre based practice. It's very much that sense of collaboration, of ownership, and of developing and ideating different concepts within a safe space. And there's a huge amount of research connected with conflict, that how can you have conflict in a world that is so polarized in opinions? How can you form your own opinion if you can't explore different options? And of course, what drama does when it's set up in a very safe parameter is to be able to explore what it's like to be, this is a primary example, but the wolf rather than being the little pig in the story. So you do get to be the baddie rather than the victim. And how does that play out? And taking those models and then using them to be able to find out who you are whilst being part of a safe environment. And Sir Ken Robinson talked about drama being the way for young people to find the world within them, as well as finding their own place within the world. And so all of this is what we endorse and what we celebrate. But to go back to your question as why are we still fighting, I think it comes back to assessment, it comes back to standardized testing. How can we, the charity I'm working for at the moment, we're trying to do impact reports to show the value of the work that we've done. However, can you show that by doing drama, you're going to definitely get a better grade in your maths and your science exam? Not necessarily. However, can you show that you're going on to take on leadership roles? Yes, you can, but those things aren't marked and graded in the same way. So with subjects where they've been identified as core subjects that students will be assessed on moving forwards, there is a higher priority and a higher energy given to those, because that leads into league tables or into ways in which schools are judged. And so this sort of top down, trickle down approach, it takes a very brave head teacher to really acknowledge what the performing arts can offer to a school. And those who do endorse it, and I'm very much talking about schools who have a limited budget, those who do endorse it and do find ways to work it into the curriculum always report back on the benefits. But it is a risk because it's not standardized. There's huge amount of work going on at the moment to try to make drama part of the British national curriculum, which at the moment it isn't. So it's very much an add-on. The Prime Minister of New Zealand recently talked about the arts and said that they were a nice to have rather than an essential, which of course then erupted into within the arts community, big responses to that, and saying all of these things. And of course, those of us who know and those of us who fly the flag can talk about this until the cows come home. But if it's not part of curriculum that's within the country, if it's not valued and mandated from higher up, it is very, very hard to argue with a head teacher or a board of governors or a school system where they don't see the intrinsic worth of it.
Yeah, I think it's the work that we often do is a little bit amorphous, right? It's like a very much like a fluid thing, and we promote that being a
Yes.
positive trait, but in doing so, it's also a negative because it doesn't have that data-driven stats that the uninitiated require to have before they accept it. Um, and there was someone who said to me, and they were talking about emotional states, and that
Mm.
there are socially aspirational emotions, and I really loved that phrasing of socially aspirational. And I think
Yes.
that that is similar in the subjects that we're able to teach. There's things that are socially aspiring, and that might be math, English, science, and then there's ones that are not. And yet we see the benefit and we see the power, and I think it just there needs to be an almost social shift for that to happen. I think I lean towards positivity, at least in the experiential world. I feel like COVID had the benefit of being able to open and broaden people's eyes to the social emotional components of the work
Absolutely.
that we do. I also see shift in the kids now, like geek chic. Like I remember when I was a kid, I was a nerd. I would have got bullied. Now it's almost a differing opinion to acceptance, a
Yes.
broader acceptance. So the new generations will be our fix to some of these structures that we've got currently in place that maybe we're fighting against. So I see some of the positives. I'm going to change slightly. I'm going to go back more into the confidence piece. I'm going to admit to being a confident skeptic, and your role here, Joe, will be to present to me some thoughts that can shift my perspective. The reason I'm saying I'm a skeptic is because I am not someone who has innate confidence.
Mhm.
I am innately imposter syndrome focused. Why should anyone listen to me? It's a lot of self narrative, which is often surprising to people because I do speak in public and I do things, but I find it's a fight, and it's I don't want to fake it till you make it. I don't like the idea. I think I try to be authentic, but I would never really describe myself as confident. Is is confidence attainable by someone who doesn't believe themselves to be confident? Maybe that's the question. Or because you suggested that you had it at the start, can I get it if I don't have it? Maybe that's a better way to say it when it comes to confidence. This is just for me, listeners. I apologize, but I just want to be better at being confident.
This is a brilliant question. I think as well, when we're talking about imposter syndrome or when we're talking about fake it till you make it, there is as well with social media and other areas of life the opportunity to appear more confident than you actually are, that you can have this facade or you can present in a way that isn't really you. And I don't think that's what I mean when I talk about creative confidence. In fact, I'm sure it's not. The purpose of what I'm doing is definitely not to fan the flames of arrogance or to enable people to just blag and fake things. It has to be from a point of truth. But going back to what we were saying before about the young person who really doesn't feel that they have anything to offer, and that is the vast majority of the young people who the charity I'm working for now reaches out to. So very, very different from my very lucky international school students abroad. It's been a real shift for me. But being able to have that sense of self-worth, to identify those traits, and to distinguish between confidence and being an extrovert. You do not have to be an extrovert to be confident. There is such a power in having a quiet confidence, in being somebody who can listen and who can analyze, who can reflect. And then what I hope I would provide would be the the next step to be able to articulate those reflections and feel that your voice deserves to be heard just as much as the people who may shout louder.
There's a beautiful book. I wonder if you've read it. Quiet by Susan Cain. If you
Yes,
have not, I encourage it because it really does talk about the introversion, extroversion. I would describe myself as an introvert, but it really talks about it being an energy based consideration, not a loud versus
yeah,
quiet or social versus shy, which I think gets misinterpreted.
it
Even
does.
as I reflect, like the confidence for me, the word confidence, I think can be misinterpreted by being bullish almost, like
Yes,
being outspoken. But what you're really advocating for is is self-worth, which I think
yes,
is like, oh wow, what a positive thing to be confident in, which as I reflect, I'm not necessarily feeling that. So it's like it's intriguing. What would you, if you, the listeners listening, if someone is listening and experiencing a lack of self-worth, what is there any like I don't want to say quick fixes, but like maybe a mantra or a thought or a feeling or a practice that could perform that might help them move towards a greater self worth.
my mum has a great expression. This is the second time I'm referencing her, but she talks about having success built in. And when embarking on a project or embarking on anything new, talking about building in that success. And I think to do that, to have that concept that there is success within you or within an endeavor, is a wonderful starting point. And then when you are at a point of change, or in a place of worry or anxiety or suffering from imposter syndrome because you're in an environment in which you don't feel comfortable, be able to look back to those traits and going back to our transferable skills and be able to identify them, articulate them, because I don't think we do enough. Being able to articulate that, dismissing it, going, oh, well, yes, I'm on a football team, but what does that relate to this job that I'm applying for? Well, actually, a huge amount, because you're turning up every week, you're consistent, you're part of a team, you're one of them, you know that being part of something big is important, and all of that, I suppose, drilling down into those skills, taking time to reflect upon them if you can. And for some people it's very, very challenging to be able to do that. Even the concept of it's not especially common within the British culture. That idea of navel gazing and looking inwards, there would have been within a few generations from us a real criticism of doing that. You're showing off, you're exaggerating what you're good at, who do you think you are? There's a lot of narrative that you have to get past in order to identify what you're really good at. And not to give too much away about the Activate speech that I'm going to give when I get to AEE, but I absolutely went through this. When I left teaching, I knew exactly who I was as a teacher. I knew who I was within that community. I knew who I was with those children and with my colleagues and their families. It was so secure. And then to step away from that, a step away from the teaching world, stepping away in some ways from the drama community, I thought I have no idea who who I am within this, and I knew that I had to give myself space to find that. And when you do give yourself that space, wonderful surprises pop up. And one of the surprises for me was going to the AEE conference 2 years ago and realizing that this room of people who I took to be very outdoorsy, they're into wilderness treks, they're into, I'm more of a glamping girl myself, if that. And I thought, oh, I'm not really sure this is for me. But I ended up in the mountains of North Carolina, in the Black Mountains, and all of a sudden they're talking about creative play. They're talking about this community. They're talking about learning experientially, of taking people away from sitting behind desks and what we can achieve when we are out in the world doing different things. And it was like a light bulb going on, because they were absolutely talking my language. And this was a community that I'd never really heard of before, that I didn't really know about. And suddenly a lot of what they were saying was resonating so strongly with me. And that was wonderful, and really set the tone for my journey then into freelance work. So I've been in that position as well, when I'm dismissing everything that I've done before because it doesn't seem relevant to this new context that I find myself in. And it is easier said than done, but to be able to step back, to list things, to go, okay, I did this and this was successful, and these were the skills that I used to do it, and therefore I can drill into those and have confidence in those as I apply them to my new context.
Yeah, the thing I'm going to reference, and I've referenced this before in the podcast, is finding community is such a grounding when it comes to being able to feel like you have worth, because
Yes,
those around you will reaffirm that and also tell you, no, you're really good at this. You need that sense of community. And for if listeners are listening and you're not involved in a community, feel like you can reach out to me. Like I could be that step into that community, the bridge that allows you to help into that community. Um, it's fascinating because very recently I was asked to join the board of AE, and I've had very much similar moments of like, well, what do I offer? What can I offer this group of people that for a long time I've looked up to, and they're members of the team that like I'm like, wow, how would I offer them? And it really took those people in those roles to tell me why. I even asked the question. I think asked the question to your husband, like, why me? And I said I said I don't mean it from a level of arrogance. I just really am. I'd like to know why you think that I could serve. And when it was given back to me, I could just accept it rather than dismiss it.
yes,
And I think too often we dismiss even the stuff that people are saying to us as like, oh, you're just saying that, rather than being able
absolutely.
to accept that maybe they're saying that because it's true,
Yes,
and that's been something that I've been working on. I think it's a result also of this podcast. Unfortunately and unfortunately, I've become a voice to a community of people, and I sometimes they talk to. I'll meet them and they'll talk to me as like, oh, I'm so surprised to meet you. It's like I'm just a human being, like I don't. But I feel like we put people on pedestals for whatever reason, but know that we are all in the same position of
absolutely.
doubt and lack of
Yes,
surety.
yes. And
Um,
both of
yeah.
us as well have obviously been in positions where we've moved to different countries. And therefore, the communities that we may have taken for granted or just naturally been a part of by being in the place where you grew up shift. And one of the things that I reflect upon as an expat, having traveled and lived in different places around the world, is that I know that I have to be proactive in seeking those communities, and it doesn't automatically happen. And it was surprising coming back to Leeds, which is where I am now in the north of England, which is where I grew up, but I haven't lived in since I was a child, that we very much consciously joined things to become part of communities. When we came back, Leeds was actually having a year of culture, which was just the best time for me to come back, because there were all these performances and celebrations and creativity that was just happened to be happening in the city that I'd returned to. So that was wonderful. But being a volunteer as part of that made me a part of a community. Joining a choir has absolutely made me part of a community. Tom's joined a running club. That's a sense of community there. We're both very excited about coming to the AEE conference in November, and that's another part of a community. So actually it's incredible, and it doesn't have to be geographically based. It can span worlds. And of course it's not as if I've lost the community that I left behind when I moved from Abu Dhabi or from Malaysia. There's still elements of it there, and lots of people in the expat community who've then moved to different countries, and we're still all in touch on social media, and that's part of it as well. And for me, I completely endorse what you're saying, that community is so important, and it connects to your self-worth and what you can give to that community. Coming back to the UK and straight away doing a lot of volunteering was really fundamental to how I integrated back into living in the UK after 16 years abroad. It was a huge amount of time, and volunteering, feeling straight away that I was meeting people, that I was starting to serve people within that community by volunteering, also really enjoying signing up and volunteering for different events that were in different parts of the city that I'd never been to before, or that I hadn't been to for many, many years. All of those kind of ideas really tap back into my own creative confidence to reassure myself that actually it was okay that I was here in home, but feeling a little bit discombobulated, for want of a better word.
Yeah. I this has been such a joy. I think about, like, I like the idea of stories, and I try in programming to try to consider like a trajectory. We're passing through stories, and I think of ours right now, of what we discussed as we've circumnavigated your past, your present, and we've now been talking about your future of things that are coming, which I find very exciting. I'm going to encourage listeners, if you have been as equally enjoying of the story as I have, that you connect with Joe. I will put all of Joe's information in the description of this podcast, and check out all the work that she's doing around confidence. I noticed as well you're doing stuff with emotional stuff, EFT, I believe, and
Yes, thank
mindfulness.
you.
Um,
Yes. And that's huge. EFT is a wonderful technique to be able to alleviate some of those negative emotions that we were talking about before.
and just to highlight, EFT is emotional freedom technique. Is that right?
That's it.
Yeah. So I encourage people to look more into all of the stuff that Joe has to offer. Um, I will certainly do so, and I'm excited to be able to connect with you in person in a month from now. It's like coming up quick, which I'm very excited about
A
as well.
calendar
It's like
month.
time is flying. Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much, Joe. This has been a real treat.
Thank you.